Welcome back to Via the Source, where you can get news about the entire NFL and, of course, the Miami Dolphins. Fins up, here's Steven, your host.
What is up, guys? Today's date is October 24th. I'm Steven Mosso, and as always, you are listening to Via the Source. Now, this episode is going to be covering the preview between the Houston Texans and the Miami Dolphins. This will be a Thursday night game. Miami is, of course, coming off of a very rough loss against the Detroit Lions, and the Texans are the opposite. They're coming off of a nice little run. They picked up a dub against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, a very important thing to talk about before is that Miami's team has become completely depleted. We already had Josh Sitton at the offensive line out for this season. Daniel Kilgore was placed on IR as well. Now, last game, Albert Wilson dislocated hip injury. Luckily, no surgery will be required. That is tremendous news because that would have made it such a devastating injury. Luckily, he will still likely miss the remainder of the season, but just the fact that it is not a labral issue is huge in terms of the recovery process, so that is great to hear. And then Kenny Stills injured with a groin injury. He will also be missing this game, leaving the remaining receivers to be Devontae Parker, Danny Amendola, and my boy Jakeem Grant. And then, of course, whoever Miami elects to call up, whether it's Leonte Carew or Isaiah Ford, that is yet to be determined. Now to begin covering this little preview, we have to take a look at the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are led by second-year quarterback Deshaun Watson. Watson is coming off a historically productive season. He only played 7 games, but managed to put up 19 touchdowns in those 7 games with only 8 interceptions. Now, he was forced to miss the remainder of last season with a torn ACL, which is the second of his football career. This season, Watson has been up and down, with his ups being very impressive and his downs being slightly average or a little bit below average. So far, he has 10 touchdowns, 1,937 yards, and 7 interceptions. Now, Watson is capable of exploding for a huge game every single week, as he's put up 4 games of over 350 yards in less than 14 full games in his career. So yeah, he's played 14 full games, and he already has 4 games of over 350 yards. So he can really just go off on any given moment. Now, Watson, he made some headlines last week because the team elected to take him by bus on a 12-hour drive to Jacksonville, and that's because Watson is playing with a partially collapsed lung and a broken rib. Then the team has been cautious about flying him on a plane due to the changes in air pressure, whether that could have an effect, and Watson ended up playing kind of okay. They got the dub. He had 139 yards passing last week and a touchdown against Jacksonville. It was more so dominated by the defense and by Lamar Miller having a pretty effective day on the ground. Now, the running game has been a weak point for the Texans most of the season. Former Dolphin Lamar Miller leads the pack here, but he too is kind of a little banged up. Last week was his second week back from suffering a chest injury that caused him to miss week 5 against the Dallas Cowboys. Last week, he picked up his first 100-yard game of the season against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So far this season, he has 371 yards and is averaging 3.9 yards per carry. The Texans receivers are pretty stacked. They are led by none other than DeAndre Nuke Hopkins. It's hard to think of a receiver who has been in a tougher situation quarterback-wise throughout his career, but despite all that, he has managed to remain at the top of the league at his position. It really, truly is a testament to how good he is at the receiver position. Now, last year he had Watson. It's definitely a huge upgrade to what he's had in his past. So as you could imagine, this year he is off to another truly amazing start. He is third in the league in receiving yards with 707. He also has 4 touchdown receptions, and he is leading the entire league in catches of over 20 yards with 13. Last week he had a solid performance against Jalen Ramsey, getting 3 catches for 50 yards, but he also had a touchdown in that one. Now, the Texans have their own little speedster of their own in Will Fuller. Fuller is a home run threat. He's a guy who can have huge, massive games, or he can be kind of invisible. And this season, he has 2 games of over 100 yards, but he also has 3 games of under 50. And I would think of him like a Taylor Gabriel type of guy. And that's the type of guy who tend to give Miami Dolphins some issues. So I would definitely keep a close eye on Will Fuller in this game. They also have Kiki Cutie, but it is looking like he will not get the start with a hamstring injury. He has been a very solid, respectable slot receiver. Now we turn to the defensive side of the ball, and honestly, wow, I feel like I am writing Osweiler's last rites as I type this section, but you know what? He survived the Bears game, so I will give him a little bit of hope, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. The Texans' defense is led by J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney. Watt is 4th in the NFL in sacks with 7, and he is 1st in forced fumbles with 4. Now, Clowney isn't too far behind on the list. He has 4.5 sacks on the season, but he makes such a tremendous impact. If you watch the film of what he was doing to this Jacksonville Jaguars O-line, he was enforcing his will. Every single play, he is a force to be reckoned with. It is terrifying when I think of Osweiler in the pocket against these two guys. Now, the team overall is 3rd in the league with sacks with 26. Now, the secondary has also been playing above average. Kareem Jackson is ranked as the number 2 safety in the league via Pro Football Focus. Veteran Jonathan Joseph has also been respectable. He comes in at the number 12 cornerback at Pro Football Focus. Tyrann Mathieu, who switched back to safety after joining the Texans this season, he's also having a nice little bounce back year. He has 2 interceptions and just made a ton of tackles. He's been all over the field all year. Now, the Texas run stopping, it has been phenomenal. They have not given up a 100-yard game to a single running back this season, and the pass game has also been respectable. The only time they have really struggled against the pass was against Andrew Luck, and that's because the Colts completely abandoned the run game, and Luck ended up throwing it over 60 times. So I will put this on par with the Bears game in terms of the defense. Maybe I'm a little less scared than I was heading into the Bears game, but this is an away game against a team that is really starting to pick up steam, and it is led by this very powerful defense. The Miami Dolphins team is depleted. I think this defense could go off on this Dolphins team, and that is very concerning. Now, my expectations, first one is that it is not Brock Osweiler's revenge game. That would be a funny outcome, and man, it would be a shocker to the entire world. But on a short week with all the injuries, it just has me thinking that it is going to be a rough one for Brock. The pressure brought by Clowney and Watt, I just think will be too much to handle in this game. My next expectation is that no Dolphins receiver has over 60 yards receiving. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Kenyon Drake leads the game or leads the team in receptions, just because I think that it is going to be a hard game to move the ball in. I don't think Osweiler will have a lot of time. I think it'll be a lot of check down routes, and I think it'll just be a lackluster performance offensively. My next expectation is that Hopkins has over 100 yards receiving. I am confident in Xavier Howard, but at the same time, I respect DeAndre Hopkins. It is a very similar situation to how I thought about the A.J. Green situation. A.J. Green had over 100 yards, and I don't think he was dominant, but he still, got his whenever he needed to. I think it could be a similar game from DeAndre Hopkins. I would expect him to have over 100 yards receiving in this game. Now we head over to my keys to victory. The first key to victory is control the running game, and this could really apply to any game, but Miami just surrendered over 200 yards rushing to the Lions. The Texans are not the greatest running team in the league. So just don't allow Lamar Miller to have over 100 yards rushing, because if he does, then you don't even need Watson to do anything. You don't even need Hopkins to have a big game. If the rushing game's there, they're going to take it. So don't let the rushing game be there, and at least force them to throw the ball. Whether they succeed at that, I would still think they do, but just don't let them run the ball and make it easy for them. The next one is find a way to control the Texans receivers. Hopkins is playing like the best receiver in the league right now. Stopping him will really require a career game from Xavier Howard, but it really doesn't stop there, because Will Fuller, he has a top level straight speed. He too can break it big over the top and make plays. So I think if Watson puts over 300 yards, that means their offense is getting points, and I wouldn't expect a depleted Dolphins offense to be able to match that. So keep Watson's targets under control, make sure he doesn't have over 300 yards, and that's would give us a fighting chance. The next one is to get creative with the play calling. Miami is once again led by Brock Osweiler. Osweiler will be behind an offensive line that is missing 2 starters. He will be throwing to a group of receivers that is also missing 2 starters. Miami is already limited by starting a backup quarterback. Their lack of healthy starters makes it predictable who's going to get the ball. It's going to be a lot of Kenyon Drake. It is going to be a lot of Devontae Parker, a lot of Amendola. Gase will have to get creative here, find ways to get the ball to Jakeem Grant or get Grant in one-on-one situations. If Gase can pull this off, he will earn back the title of being an offensive guru in my mind. And that is how I'm going to end this episode, guys. Let me know what you guys think. Leave some comments down below. Like, subscribe. You can follow me at ShadySteven at Via the Source. And that's how I'm going to wrap it up. Let me know what you guys think. Until next time, though, I'm Steven Masso, and this was Via the Source.